What's up guys, Jeff Cavaliere, AthleanX.com. Today we're talking all about the push-up. You know that basic bodyweight exercise that works your chest, your shoulders, and your triceps, if you're doing it right, and we've covered that before? Well, guess what? It actually does a lot more than that. You see, it does build those three muscle groups, but there's variations, if you're willing to explore them, that are going to work the whole rest of your body. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to pick up at least 2 or 3 different variations you never thought of before that you're going to want to start doing. So with that being said, guys, let's see how we can expand that muscle repertoire from just those classic 3 to a hell of a lot more. So now I talked about all the different areas you're going to be able to hit with the push-up, but let's start with the obvious here, the chest. And there's actually a couple things you can do that I've covered here before that are going to allow you to have a greater influence on the chest because you can include a component of adduction into your push-up. And I know you're probably thinking, how do we adduct our arms together if they're fixed together on the ground? Well, we have 2 different ways we can do it. The first is with an isometric variation, and this is called a squeeze-up. You see, I don't want you to think about pushing your body off the ground as much as I want you to think about squeezing your body off the ground. Though the hands won't move any closer to each other, if you apply that inward force on the ground towards each other, you'll get that isometric contraction of the chest that's going to allow you to feel it take over and be the main driver of the push off the ground as opposed to necessarily the shoulders or the triceps. And we can take it a little step further and get some adduction with a move like this, and it's the rotating push-up. And this here gives us something called relative adduction. In other words, I'm not actually taking my arm across my body, but I know that I can actually turn my body in space to create that adduction. So if my hands are fixed here on the ground, and as I push up, I rotate that way, you can see if I turn back to center that I've actually created adduction at the shoulder joint, meaning I got a better contraction in my chest. So both of these variations are going to be powerful when it comes to influencing a little bit more chest activation out of this classic exercise. The second of the most obvious muscle groups hit by a push-up is the triceps. But here again, we do have some options to sort of increase the activation by just changing how we do the exercise. And the first one here is called the pancake push-up. And essentially what you're trying to do is to do a tricep push-down with a straight bar, except you don't have a tricep push-down machine and you don't have a straight bar. All you have is your body and the floor. And you can see the position of the forearms gives me that same relative position that I'd have in a tricep push-down. And all I'm trying to do is extend through the elbows. And as I come up here, you can see that there's a tremendous amount of load that's applied to the triceps in this position. A lot of us will find that we probably have to drop down to our knees, even at the more advanced level, just to be able to handle the amount of weight that you're lifting here. And we can go a little bit further. I talk all the time about the value of trying to train the tricep long head because we know it makes up a large portion of the mass of the triceps. And to do that and to get a complete contraction, you need to have your arms sort of at the level of your body or behind with the elbow fully extended. And that's where the Cobra push-up proves to be very valuable. The setup of the exercise has us start with our elbows tight to the side, and as we come up and shift our chest forward, we get that positioning of the arms back behind our body into extension with that straightened out arm. And you can see the long head get into a complete contraction here. There's no other variation of the push-up that is going to engage the triceps into this type of contraction as long as the arms are out in front of your body. You got to get them tight or behind in order to experience something this strong. So when it comes to the shoulders, again, we know that the regular push-up does a good job of hitting the shoulders, but a lot of times we don't necessarily want them to do the work, right? We talked about with the chest how you want to get that chest out in front so it takes on the lion's share of the load. But if we wanted to develop our shoulders more so with the push-up, how can we do that? Just make a few of these variations. And the first one you see here is just a modified planche version of the push-up, meaning we're getting our arms in our hand position way back, as far back as we can without tilting forward. And what that does is it shifts the load away from the chest more to that front delt. And you can see it doing the workload here as I push up in every rep. The other thing we can do here is this push-away press. And this now obviously forces our body to change the direction that we're pushing. So instead of pushing straight up and down with our chest doing most of the work, we can actually make our shoulders do more of the work by pushing away. And again, we could take this even a step further and turn it into a pike variation. And with the pike, you're just getting that vertical position or more of a vertical position. But again, we can take this even one step further and actually go completely vertical against the force of gravity. Now this would be like doing a standard overhead press with a barbell. And then finally, we can shift the focus on a push-up more to the middle delt.
How is that possible, Jeff?
I'm glad you asked, Jesse. We can actually do it here with this bodyweight side lateral raise. And I showed you again, this is the concept of that relative movement. And this is relative abduction at the shoulder. We know that if we can get the arm in this position here, this would be abduction with a side dumbbell lateral raise, that would work the shoulder. Well, why can't we keep that arm fixed and then rotate the body and create that same relative positioning into abduction? Well, we can, as you just saw. We get in this position here and we drop down to the ground so that when we come out of it, we're still pushing up the upper portion of our body weight. As we get up, we're rotating up towards the sky to get that fully abducted shoulder. And you can see the middle delt here is lit up. The fact is, this is a great way to hit that middle delt with just a slight variation on this popular exercise. All right, so now that concludes the more obvious push-up variation portion of this video. Like maybe you've even tried a bunch of those before. But this is where it gets interesting, you see, because this is where we see how we can train a hell of a lot more than just our pushing muscles when we do these exercise variations I'm going to show you. And we start here with the back. And we know that the back is one of those muscle groups that tends to get a little bit underserved in the home training environment. But now you got some more options. This is probably my favorite. This is the sliding pull-down push-up. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but this is what it does. We know that there's an exercise called the straight arm push-down. And what that does is it works your lats. It takes them full of fully stretched position, down here close to your sides, adducted, squeezed, and you feel your lats working. Well, we can do the same thing here with just your floor. And what we're trying to do is pull ourselves back to that push-up position by using our lats and getting our lats and elbows driven back down into our sides. The next exercise we have here is the thumbs up push-up. And this one's a little bit tricky. What you're doing here is you're trying to drive your fists with your thumbs up down into the ground and your forearms down into the ground. They're in this W position to try to get into a more of an externally rotated position to protect your shoulders. But really what we're doing is we're driving through protraction of the shoulder blades. You're going to feel the muscles deep under the shoulder blades doing the work here. A lot of people will say they feel it through the back itself as you're getting some protraction of the shoulder blades. But the key here is that you're driving through a different set of muscles and you're going to feel it work in a different way. And then finally we have our back widow exercise, and this is where we take the push-up and we literally flip it upside down. And remember, the true definition of a push-up is just pushing your body off of the floor. Well, that's what we're doing here. It's a bodyweight exercise where we're pushing our body off the floor, except this time we're face up instead of face down. And you can see that we've now just completely directed all the focus away from the front side to the back side. And all of the muscles here on the back side, the rear delts, the rhomboids, the lower traps, the upper traps, they're all doing a hell of a lot of work here just to get into this position. And now we move on to the legs. That's right, the legs for a push-up. You see, there's actually some amazing ways to incorporate your legs into a push-up. And my first place I want to start right here is with the area that tends to get underserved anyway, and that's the glutes and hamstrings, the posterior chain muscles. And one of the best ways you can do this is with this glute ham raise push-up. The glute ham raise itself, or the Nordic raise, is one of the best exercises you can do to incorporate glute and hamstring activation together. Most of the time we tend to let the hamstrings dominate and not let the glutes work in concert. Well, here we get this eccentric loading of those two muscle groups as we lower down to the ground, and we utilize the push-up to help to get us back up to the position where we can get engagement of those muscles to then pull the rest of the way. So we get a concentric activation of the hamstrings and glutes on the way up from probably the midway up to the top, and then of course eccentrically all the way down to the point where we catch ourselves in the push-up. We can move on from here and do this exercise variation also, and this is called the ham curl push-up. What you do is you anchor your feet on the other side of something that's not going to move, and as we use our hands to push up off the ground, again, we're focusing on allowing the hamstrings to help to dig backwards into the ground to assist us in getting our body up. But it's not just hitting the hamstrings. As I get up to the top here, you can see all the posterior chain muscles of my back once again are working, and again, even the triceps are working as I extend through the elbows. So now we can't hit the glutes and hamstrings without turning our focus around to the front and getting the quads involved here too. Now look, we're not talking about max squats here to build massive thighs, but what we are talking about is an option to get the legs at least involved in the push-up. And this one does just that, and it's called the rolling squat push-up. Now again, this serves more as a good combination movement that's more of a conditioning combination, but the fact is it does allow us to engage those muscles if you're not doing them at all right now. What we can do though beyond that is something called the TKE push-up. And this is a little bit interesting. You see, what you do is you take your feet and you anchor them on something high, a higher surface, in this case my boxes. And then as I'm pushing out of this push-up, I'm allowing the legs to drive me. See, I'm not focused on necessarily pushing through the hands, even though they obviously are pushing down to the ground. I'm actually extending my body up by extending my knee. By pushing down into that box, I can't move or overcome that box, but it forces my leg to extend. And we know that knee extension causes quad contraction. So the quad contraction is what's really driving me up here. And I will tell you this, I don't care how strong your quads are. If you do 15 or 20 of these, your quads will be burning, and you might be even a little bit embarrassed to admit it, but it does do the job. And then we wrap up this tour around our body. We can't forget to hit the most important area as the central station for everything, and it's our core. And to do this, we got to introduce a couple exercise variations. But the first one here is the cliffhanger push-up. And what we do is we extend our hands out in front of us with our fingers down onto the ground. And once our hands pass the level of our head, the feeling that we get here completely changes. Now the entire front side core musculature is on fire. We have to now try to lift the entire weight of our body off of the floor. And this is where that really strong core challenge comes in. And then finally, we have that slightly more doable variation for our core, and this is the Black Widow knee slide. So we get in position here and we perform our push-up, and as we come up, we get this bottom-up rotation of the knee heading towards the opposite elbow. And in order to get the core activated even more, we have to drive and slide that knee up as high as we can, which creates this posterior pelvic tilt, more flexion of the trunk, more ab engagement. So you can see that there's so many.
Jeff.
Oh my God.
I've got a great.
Where have you been, by the way?
Oh, I've been, dude, coming up with great push-up variations. You
Oh
remember?
yeah, what do you got?
Oh, so you remember my my floor pull-ups? Remember how great those were? Dude, this is even better. Look, it's a pull push-up.
You know what you should do with that pole?
What?
You should stick it
Whoa,
right up.
oh, okay. You want me to go?
You can leave.
You really want me to?
That's
leave?
not a good variation.
Okay.
Guys, you can see with the right variations here that there's actually a lot of benefit you can take to your push-up workouts so that you can hit a lot more muscle groups than maybe you thought of in the beginning. It's not just about chest, triceps, and shoulders. If you're looking for a program, guys, where we show you everything to do step by step without any equipment at all, it's our home workout program called Athlean Zero. It's over at athleanx.com. If you found the video helpful, leave your comments and thumbs up below. And also, if you haven't already done so, guys, click subscribe and turn your notifications so you never miss a new video when I put one out. All right, guys, see you soon.